I'm like ये ऐसा शो है जहाँ पे सिर्फ LGBT community के लोग perform कर सकते हैं. And I
And
was
you
really glad.
made it all happen. No one even tries to discriminate against you because I know you personally. You wouldn't like. I would like to see someone try discriminate against you. Like that would be hilarious. First of all.
Yeah. Start performing at open mics, I would go and watch like comics. I remember watching Sarul Channa. I remember watching Mehta. I remember watching all these British comics would come to canvas back then because they could afford them.
I know these sound. I know these sound very
No, you
interviewing.
know the answer also, Aayushi. That's what I'm. That's what I'm laughing.
I think people realize you are the only comedian who has your own custom walk-on music. Hello, welcome to the Green Room chat. So my name is Aayushi, and today's guest is Navin Noronha. Oh my God, Navin Noronha, the gayest gay boy I know.
What's funny is this is a green room chat while we live one house away from each other.
The irony, right?
Yeah.
The irony, because even when even when I was discussing this podcast with them, I was like, we can just sit in the same room and do it because one floor is all that separates us.
Yeah.
Naveen, is it fair to say you think we've had that you've had an illustrious career?
No. I think I've had a career. That's the most important thing. Somehow I've survived in this game in this game of treachery. No, no. It's just that I've readily acknowledged that the opportunities presented to me
Right.
as a queer person have been much lesser if I had just been a cisgender straight boy.
That is
And
true.
because I know I'm instinctively funny, I can stand my ground with most of the big names in the scene.
I think
Uh,
you can.
but the fact that I speak vocally about what my life is all about on stage, uh, that kind of brings a lot of education to the world, but also kind of takes away some things from you, and that's totally fair. It's okay. The world is not ready for me.
You're going to have to like be a little patient with me as we both figure this podcast out. But see, the thing is, what I genuinely do love about you on stage is there is this effortlessness that I feel like a lot of us lack, especially like it's almost like all of us in the pandemic forgot how to do stand up, and yet you go back and do it perfectly. It's a little annoying. Honestly, we both performed on the same lineup last night in the Habitat Green Room. These are the conversations that happen. Naveen is always so effortless. Like it's do you think do you think over time, like with the hours that you have done with especially with Good Child, like do you think now you prefer doing Good Child after it has changed, or did you like the first original version of Good Child? Like how has that been?
So that was 3-4 years ago when I first started the special,
Right.
and since then I've done the first version of it was called Coming Out Soon because I
Oh,
wanted to be
I like
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
So when I first did my first solo, I stood on stage for 50 minutes. I couldn't do 60 minutes. So I was disappointed by that. I couldn't sustain myself for 50 minutes with enough jokes types. I don't remember the content back then because that was like whatever I have, I'm presenting on stage. There was no narrative flow, there was no structure to it. So, but I would do it like 4 times a month. With like 5 people, 4 people. I didn't care. I just wanted to do it, and those people who came had really good time. I remember, because over time, I never had like auditorium shows where people would like come in thousands, but those 4-5 people became friends over time. They became more than just comedy fans. So I think that for me is very cute. And then Coming Out Soon became the Good Child when like my manager Nana entered my life, and it's like, you know what, watch Hannah Gatsby, go watch Nanette, go watch Josh Thomas, the queer people basically doing what they're doing. Wanda Sykes, go watch all these people who have done it before you and done it in a better way. So I've watched them, like I was first introduced to like Bowen Yang recently, but like I wish like I had someone like him growing up on SNL because then I used to watch so much of SNL. Like I was obsessed with Kristen Wiig. I was watching so much of Bill Hader, the whole that clan. Chris Farley was my god, for example. Yeah. So all of these things, the comedy influences were there in my life, and I'm like now And then I've done improv as well, so kind of helped me stay on stage longer because I became a better listener. So all these things came together, and The Good Child became like this one beautiful story. And I was really happy because that was happening real time in my life, my coming out experiences, and I was taking it directly to stage. So it was like raw, passionate wounds trying to be filled by humor. And I know it sounds very weird, but like that's the absolute reality of it all, you know. And now, like years later, when my mom sees that video and she sees what I documented in that stand-up, she kind of gets where I was coming from. So it's kind of like that, you know. It's like a open letter to my family, so to say, in the long run.
Is that true about The Good Child? Do you genuinely consider that as an open letter to your family?
Yeah, because that the notion of a good child was like fed into me for a very long time, you know. Like, and idealistic life choices were made for me by my family because of certain people who were around us doing better, you know. So I was always frustrated by that fact that why am I being held to that standard and why am I the supposedly the good child. So the whole show is an ironic take on that only, you
That's so
know.
interesting. I never knew that. I mean, we've known each other for years, that I did not know. Like, you described The Good Child as an open letter here. That's so wonderful, man. Like, it's
Yeah,
because I always find it interesting how material changes. And I was lucky enough to open for you in Pune when you
yeah.
did The Good Child in Pune. And I've seen like that, that material kind of like tighten and change and evolve and grow.
Yeah, a lot of it went out of YouTube as well because I didn't want to be held by that, you know, because I'm like, this is happening in this point in time. Let's
Yeah,
get it out and then figure out new material. And then, like,
yeah,
because I started dating a bee and I went through the entire pandemic, like, with only my cats and everything, like my life was writing itself, you know. Like the material just kept on happening, and I'm
right,
like, yeah, this is what we do, and this is what our life goal is, right? To make everything
yeah.
that we experience and turn into humor, perhaps in some way or the other. And that's why, like, I'm not much of a, you know, I don't talk much in a green room. I don't like show superiority or like, hey, I'm bouncing material of people, because I'm very reclusive that way. I'm like, I'll go to the stage and say what I want to say, because
Yeah.
that's where I have the most fun and that's where I'm the most me, you know.
No,
And
that I
yeah,
can attest to.
yeah.
Naveen sits quietly. Naveen, I think my favorite thing about Naveen in a green room is him and possibly like a soft drink or something like that, like a beverage, and then snacking and material. Like there is like 7, 8, 11, 25,000 other people you put in that room. Naveen's not going to care. He means like, I need to go back out there and make it.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
thing is also, I think it's very funny if someone even tries to discriminate against you, because I know you personally, you wouldn't like, I would like to see someone try discriminate against you. Like that would be hilarious, first of all.
yeah.
But like, has that happened? Like, is that like do you think still in this day and age, that discrimination is very apparent to you in the scene?
Uh, Not so much now.
Hmm.
Earlier it was. Earlier, like, I straight up, I don't know if I told you this, but like one of the bigger producers in the city at Blue Frog told me not to talk about being gay because there's a family crowd coming to Blue Frog.
Oh, fair.
Which I first laughed at because Blue Frog is serving alcohol and there are smokers and there are people doing what kind of stuff, you know, around the backstage. And I'm like, dude, like, wouldn't the families want to have like some perspective on what's it like to have a queer child? Isn't that like, if they have a child and if that child does not be gay, of course, like they will have some kind of context to that person, you know, talking about on stage. But that's the thing. I just stopped giving a damn after a while because now, like from Abish to like Sumedh yesterday, and like multiple comics have like now wised up to the fact that he maybe has done this material past this guy, you know.
Right.
And I think now, because like even you've come out since that time, you know,
Yeah.
and we're doing the curated comedy show together, there's so
Yeah.
many more avenues for people in the scene to talk to people. Like if someone's pan, if someone's asexual, if someone's trans, like we discovered Ritushri to the mic, right? And
Yes.
yeah, and that was such a revelation because now, like, I people would ask me questions about trans rights and everything. And I'm like, I'm not the person to talk to it about because that's not my life. You know, I can give you the perspective of a gay man living in this modern day and age, but for a trans woman, what it is like, or for a trans man, what it's like, for a non-binary person, what's it like? You have to ask those people the questions. And then I'm so glad that she came in, and we were there on the lineup last this month only, 9th October. We did the YouTube recording for the show, and the way she destroyed Ritushri, I think, will go down in history as as a legend for the longest time, right?
I agree, because at the first queer mic, here are like other queer comedians, like we do lineups together all the time. And Ritushi, not necessarily, we don't see her on the circuit as much. And then she comes and this destruction level happens, which is so, and it's all thanks to you. I love that. Like I don't know if people realize that what the feat it is to have like a live show in a public venue for recording. Like that's a cool thing. Like when you did Curated, I know you would never let it reach us as other fellow queer comedians, but have you gotten nonsense about doing Curated, or has anyone like vocally express themselves or like be like, hey, Curated? It's like, no, like,
so yeah, there've been mixed reactions. Everything, like,
right.
like some of my older friends who are still like homophobic and still talk to me for some reason. And like these are college friends, so like these are the locker room boy conversations now, but like I'm calling them out types.
Fair.
So they're like, why do you have to do this only? Sab aap gay-giri karenge kya stage pe?
Right.
And I'm like, ha, gay-giri karenge. Like this, you can't talk to these people until they've come to the show and witness what's it like to have an entire spectrum of comedians talk about so many things, right? Like that was my worry initially as well. I'm like, okay, will it get too much? Starting from my special itself, I'm like, okay, am I talking about this weird perspective for like 1.5 or sometimes, and is it like getting too much? But no, like there's such a life to live, such a journey to experience through everything. And like we get such a narrow perspective in comedy, and that's what I first noticed before I went and start performing at open mics. I would go and watch like comics. I remember watching Sarul Channa. I remember watching Mehta. I remember watching all these British comics would come to canvas back then because they could afford them. So I would go and watch these comics and see what they're talking about, and then like there was none of the perspective that I was trying to share. So ever since that time, I would doubt that whether talking about being gay for an hour or so is even worth it. But it was not. I was proved wrong myself. And going forward now with the because we started queer mics on Zoom first, right? In the pandemic, that's when I was like, okay, let's just like do it because we have so much queer talent, but they're all spread out. And where else to capitalize on this but this? And then it all culminated from 2020 to this year's June Pride Month edition, where we saw 2 shows with almost 100 people turning up. And again, I was afraid because I'm like, okay, Zoom is a open avenue. People will get the link and come. They will be abused. There will be heckling. None of that happened, right? It was amazing. So even we did first comedy mics we started doing on stage last year before the pandemic. Jia Sethi, who's from Comedy Ladder, her banner was helping us do that. We got like 2 3 registrations. I remember one the first time we did it at Integral Space in Lower Parel. This one guy came, he registered and everything. And me, out of just like sheer laziness, I didn't ask him if he's queer or not. Okay. So I'm running 10 minutes late, and Gia's intern is like, hey, this guy's not queer. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I go to the venue and I'm like, sir, आप gay नहीं हो रहा? And he's like, नहीं. So I'm like, ये ऐसा शो है जहाँ पे सिर्फ LGBT कम्युनिटी के लोग परफॉर्म कर सकते हैं. So like, अच्छा ऐसा है क्या? उनके ऊपर जोक्स है मेरे पास. And I'm like, fuck. Hey, dude, no. So it was like quite funny. And that's when I remember Kes had come as an audience member.
Yeah.
And a year later, Kes ended up coming out to me and ended up coming to the queer mic on Zoom, where we would do the mic set. And we found Itushri on Zoom. We found Bolti from Bangalore. Yeah. We got Gileri from Rajasthan, I think.
Yes.
Somebody else, Sejal from Gujarat. So there were so many acts from around the country. Pokraj from Pune as well.
Yeah.
There's so many names who are now openly gay and coming to mics. We have like this. We have this little queer boy Jivitesh who follows us around. He's like a super gay fan of us.
So cute.
And that's what. So we have like and I have one more fan called Ramnesh who always comes to my shows on Zoom and all because despite the fact that pandemic kind of wrecked a lot of our lives.
Yeah.
For a lot of queer people, that online avenue became the only way to connect. So
that's true.
That's why I was very glad to do this bi-monthly or monthly, whenever we could, right? Between like working and trying to make ends meet in the pandemic.
Yeah.
And finally, when we got to like take this on stage, I was like very ecstatic because a lot of factors had to come together for that to happen, and all of them fell in place. Venue booking, acts, date, finances, recording, all of that.
And you really made it all happen.
Yeah, and I love that. Like I've done programming for comedy back at Hive when Hive was running.
That's
For
true.
Habitat, 2 years I did that.
Yes.
So I am very impassionate about comedy. It's just that this art form, once I found it, I'm like, fuck, this is it. This is what I've been made to do. No, I've been born to do this rather, and it's so, as you said, like it's very like you slip into it. And so for years I used to compare it. Like for 7 years I used to do like all these Catholic events and everything. And there was something amiss always. I realized that this is not my forte, but I'm good at this.
Yeah.
Getting people riled up, and saying stuff which in the moment is funny and everybody has a great time. But there are kids, so you can't say anything
Yeah, you
nasty or
can't
whatever.
say everything.
Once in a while I would get like an adult party, like where it's like,
Right.
just like adults gathering. So I would do like these friends quizzes for them, like,
Right.
because I was obsessed with friends when I was younger.
Right.
Like random How I Met Your Mother quiz or like randomly, and they would all enjoy.
Aw.
So I knew that there's some scope for that in this thing.
Yeah.
And then when I discovered Bill Burr and like all these other comics that I was already watching, I'm like, fuck, I can do this on stage. And then
Yeah.
I love doing this. It's essentially like, if I don't know, if I was not doing comedy, I don't know what I would be doing right now with my life. Yeah.
Well, luckily we don't have to find out. That's the magic of this. You just mentioned Bilbo earlier. You mentioned Bowen Yang. You mentioned Hannah Gadsby, Wanda Sykes. Is there like I don't like to genuinely use the word like influence, because I think you can just love different kinds of artists and people. But is there somebody's career that you really find inspiring, or is there
Yeah.
someone's who's your favorite comedian? Who do you watch?
Of all time, Bill Hicks, hands
Yeah.
down. Like, I'm still like tearing up a little bit thinking about it, because like he had a major effect on my young psyche, because
Yeah.
this guy was on stage talking about drugs, talking about
Yeah.
about sex, about divorce, about about political environment of that time, like, and how like the whole war on drugs was so anti-black, and this guy was calling it out back then, right? And he
Yeah.
was this dark, brooding poet, and
Yeah.
he died at 34 of fucking pancreatic cancer. He used to smoke like a chimney on stage and everything,
Yes.
right? But yeah, for a young me, that guy was a major influence, because I'm like, hey, if he can talk about this on stage back in the 80s, like, we can definitely
Yeah.
try this a little bit. And that's why Karunesh became a major influence, because like, there are mirroring styles, and
Yeah.
I saw a lot of Bill Hicks and Karunesh.
Yeah.
Just hoping that he doesn't die at 34. Uh,
No, he
I'm
won't.
just kidding. But that's the thing, like most of my icons in comedy, like Chris Farley was the improv icon, right? And Billix was the stand-up, like the
It's true.
stay in one spot and say the
Yeah.
truth kind of. So both of
Yeah.
them died in their early 30s, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is fucked up, right? Like, why did they have to die? They are such funny people. But I think that kind of makes it even more iconic, that in the short time that they had in this world, they created something really amazing. And I keep joking about this with Abhi, because he's my number one fan. Like everything that I say on stage or everything that I do creative wise, it goes to him like a filter, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't get it why you don't have that kind of like blue tick, or that kind of 100,000 plug, or like, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know it's like sometimes when you are the first in something, you have to take the pitfalls as well as the success. And I know that it will be mostly in reminiscing that I'll be more famous in the in the years to come, when I'm done living my life on this planet. I know
Yeah.
that for a fact, and
No,
that's
but
the bitter truth.
I think he's right. Like we see it. Like I see it genuinely. I never think of you as a, because I feel like I don't think people understand the level. Like, you know what I mean? Right now it's an internal knowledge that if you want a room to stay alive for 2 hours, send Navin Noronha out. Like it's a,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like Baraj talks about it. We discuss it. Like it's common knowledge to us. And then I think all that's going to happen is that the rest of the world is just going to also come to this knowledge and
yeah.
realization very soon.
Slowly catch up to it. Yeah.
Exactly. Like finally be like, oh my God, why are you sleeping on this guy? Like,
That's why I was so glad, like, now Habitat does like streams. And
yes,
so like, because it of course is very heavy and expensive to record every show and then
of
put it
course.
on. But thanks to the wonders of Drive, now it goes
Yeah.
on the net, stays unlisted. But I'm just glad that this repository is there, like, of this time and age.
Yeah.
And the fact that, like, despite the pandemic happening and everything that went wrong, we came back. All of us came back to the scene with the same gusto. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, again, it gives me so much joy and inspiration, because of the fact that this country has thrown so much at us, right? Like, as just stand-up comedians from the early 2000s, like, when comedy first took birth.
Yeah.
the live pub scene or the club scene that we are now talking about. Uh, from the very beginning, there was resistance either from the Congress people, from Shiv Sena, from MNS, now right now up to like the whole BJP thing happening.
Yeah.
The political landscape has changed. Comics have gone to jail. Comics have gotten death threats.
Yeah.
Shows have been cancelled. Blackface has happened. Ink, black inking on the faces happened. I'm sorry.
That was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So and despite all of it, we do this. And what kind of madness is this? What other person when they're told, "Ki, hey, if you turn up one day, we'll come and beat you up, 25 of
Yeah.
us." What kind of madness takes over us then to still do it? It's
Yeah.
if it's nothing, then it's love for this art form, right? Like if this one little window of joy that people get, like Balraj and I often like Balraj is the owner of Habitat for those of you don't know,
Yes.
and we often talk about like because we do Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, right? Back to back 3 shows, packed rooms, lineup is ready, everything is like the night is all psyched up, people are
Yeah.
drinking and everything. So we always check the temperaments on like okay Wednesday there's a dip in the audience because it's the midweek blues.
Yeah.
Tuesday is like because the week is started, so they're like yeah we are here for comedy, and by Thursday they're like okay Friday is almost here, so let's just
Yeah.
have
Like
more
that.
fun.
It's 1 day away from
Yeah.
Friday.
But on a personal level, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in like this days. I'm like they take what you give them, okay? And on a certain day, if I'm off, I know that, and they know that, and then they just like realize that, okay? Like also, what happens is I think one thing that really puts me off as a host is like because now more than ever I make an attempt to look nicer on stage, which I remember Shrija recently commented when I was in the green room with her. Shrija Chaturvedi comes up to me, he's like, I don't want to be like saying it in the wrong way, but like your dressing sense is massively like changed. Your game has changed. And I'm like, I know, I'm acknowledging it because earlier I used to travel from Bhayandar,
Yeah.
which is 35 kilometers from Bandra.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you travel in a train like that, you get sweaty and tired.
Yeah.
So you carry extra shorts and jeans and t-shirts in your bag
Yeah.
and change before the show because you don't want to sting the stage,
Yeah.
but also you're kind of like last resort clothes are what you're wearing right now.
Yeah.
So I understand. So since I made the shift to car, I can now walk up nicely and like, I can have shoes that have white soles also and go on stage, because getting stepped on by 10 men at a time.
Yeah.
So all these things factors matter. I think a lot of comics who struggle, like I see Suhail sometimes, he travels from Dombivli, Kalyan side, so many people who have like even cares for that matter. On the day of the show, Bichara, the show was at 6 p.m. He left Bhiwandi at 3 p.m. Okay, and still reached 4 hours late. Like no, he came to the venue at 7 p.m. So you can't help the city. Again, the city throws so much at you, right? Fucks you up in every way possible, and still somehow we've managed to like do this. So I'm just glad at the end of the day that we get to do this.
My favorite part of that whole story is like your dressing sense is improved when Shrija Chaturvedi
of all people
yeah is commenting as a judgment of your clothes. Like that's my favorite
part. So sometimes like if you drop the ball, like recently I did mess up where like Akash Mehta was leaving for Goa for the shoot. And I was helping him pack, and I got lost in the packing and just having fun with him types. And I forgot like mostly Habitat. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just like I'm like wearing like a full sleeve t-shirt and like shorts and slippers. Okay.
Yeah.
So and literally I'm like Akash, give me your nicer slippers because I don't wear my dirty slippers. So I go in nice slippers and this lady from South Bombay is just ready. She just made that face and just ready to like judge me. So Balraj like, see bro, I know, I understand whatever. I was like, so the show was at 8 o'clock. I got on stage at 8:23 sharp. Okay. So I'm 23 minutes late, which is again a norm at Habitat. Every show doesn't start at 8.
Yeah, around 8:15 is a good place.
Yeah. But this one lady was throwing tantrums. Okay, so I knew that if I go up on stage and I don't apologize, or if I don't take down the alpha in the room right now, which is her, then the night is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So my first, like I didn't even have 10 minutes this time to warm up the crowd. I had 5 minutes because we had
you have to start,
and 10 o'clock is the government shutdown time, curfew time, so you can't do anything. So I'm like, in 5 minutes I have to go up, apologize, get the show started, take her down, and so basically then she was like, I'm going to like going to go and celebrate my husband's birthday afterwards.
Right.
So her husband was there with her, sorry. So I was like, okay, then what do you want? Like, you want to celebrate here, we can do a little striptease for you and everything. So the moment you kind of like make it friendly, like, hey, we're friendly, she kind of like smiled. There was a smile, and then like finally everybody like kind of mellowed down. So there are times when this also happens, and when they look at you from top to bottom, judging you for like what you're wearing, I get very conscious. I become like, why? So yesterday, as you saw, like I was like fully nicely dressed, and I'm like, now it's just all about going up to a Beyonce number or to like a Freddie Mercury number and just doing
Yes.
my thing. And the
Also,
rest is
I don't think people understand. I don't think people realize you are the only comedian who has your own custom walk-on music.
yeah,
Not a
yeah,
single other comedian do I know who like then goes and says, I will only walk out to this. So
yeah.
anyone who's watching this, understand that whenever Navin Noronha performs to 2 people, 20 people, 200 people, or 2,000 people, it is always, there are songs that Naveen will walk on to, otherwise Naveen will not walk on stage.
Yeah, and when we've gone to Australia, this was a main thing that our organizer Toby would say, because like everybody else would be like, okay, I'm playing this, okay, maybe
Right.
I'll like play Jenny from the Block, I'll play something whatever opera housey,
A gay anthem, basically.
yeah, anthem basically, and they're like, Naveen, what do you want? And I would be like, every day I would have a new song.
I
And
love it.
yeah, and Toby's like, Naveen, we're doing 5 cities in 5 days, and you do realize that you have to change the rider for every show because of you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, Toby, I realize that. But then, would you not want me to go and feel fabulous on stage? So it's cute. Like, I had a great time. Like, because it was a bunch of Gaysians in Australia just doing their thing. What a great time. We lived in a motel in Australia. That was great.
That was,
In a bumfuck part of like Parramatta, Canberra, where like after 9 o'clock, there was not even like a soul on, like not even a ghost or like a rat on the street. It was amazing.
Oh man.
And the front row was full of daddies. It was amazing.
Yeah. Just to quickly wrap things up, I just want to ask you one last thing. If there was one thing that you could, from your side, change about the scene in India, right? Like, what is the one thing, or a couple of things? Like, what do you think? I know these sound very interviewing.
No, you know the answer also, Aayushi. That's why I'm we have discussed this off record in length so much.
Every time we have to do but every time we have to do any of these podcasts, you and I have to pretend like, like we have to talk about our friends with full names like Akash Mehta and Shrija Chatur. It's so weird, dude.
Yeah. And that's what, because like Akash and I, when we did the podcast Lab, one of the main critiques we got was people would love listening to our stories and everything.
Right.
But sometimes they were like, hey man, who is Anuj? Who is who is Rahul Pal? Like, we don't know who these people are. So and we're just like throwing in references like that. But to come back to the question, what needs to change is gatekeeping. Essentially, the scene, for the lack of a better word, is kind of like there are people who are in powerful positions who have kind of spread their tentacles around, and everybody knows who they are. There are some good people in that yard, so to say. But there are some very nasty people as well. And usually when comedy and management go hand in hand, and when the management kind of like outweighs the comedy, it becomes a business. And that's what I don't like about it, is that we can all just like, if you strip off all the niceties and all these, the facade of what comedy should be, and just keep it grungy and keep it real. Like we did last night at Habit, for example, there was no pretense, So that's what I want. That's what I want. The bare bones of comedy is just like when people took a small podium, stood above the others, not to say that we are superior or I have a higher ground, but like, hey, I'm saying something, and for this time and space, do you agree with me on this? And if you disagree, let's have a discourse, man. Let's fucking talk, because that's what comedy is. But it's all, people are like bottling it down to certain trifectas or whatever. It's just like, it's so watered down sometimes, So I don't like that, and I'm very old school in terms of like comedy. I still like, I'll go watch and like I watch comics like Barry Crimmins. Nobody's heard of them. Like, do you know who Barry Crimmins is?
No, I don't, I'm afraid.
No, so he's from a Boston area where like he started a comedy club, and he made a club only for the most unfortunate comics. When I say that, I mean that like he was abused as a child, and he figured out that there was no scope for him to talk about the abuse and the rape that he went through as a child in the LA or the New York comedy circuit. So he went and started his own room. So then that's when like young people like Wonders like started from there. So many people, like recently another comic, Kevin, I forget his surname, but Kevin Martin, I think, he recently passed away, but he was one of the first gay comics to come out at that venue, because he made that room for people who could not talk about their visible comics, people from lower income backgrounds, Hispanic comics, So he made that space. So I kind of like look back to that time and age where like comedy was just about being real on stage, and nothing else.
No, I think with you in a place where you are, I think we'll get there slowly. So
yeah,
and
it's been very gradual and nice also. It's not like I was very kind of like you know this and I know this because last this Pride month, June for example,
Yes.
was good for us,
Yes.
and
We had fun. It was
yeah,
so
and we
cool.
did a bunch of gigs we did, and I made like enough money for the next couple of months just by
Yeah.
doing Pride shows, right? And I'm good, okay. I'm like, okay, there's tokenism, but it's okay because it's paying our bills, and
Yeah.
like there's only so much that passion can take you forward. The rest is just like
Ah,
falling through with it.
appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time, Naveen. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys, for listening to Green Room Chats. My name is Aayushi. Our guest today was Navin Noronha. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Please leave a comment, ask us questions. Anything you have, please DM us. Our socials will be in the bio as well. Please keep following the Green Room Chats for more fun pairings of comedians who come and talk about things. So, yeah,
yeah.
thank you.
And if from a different city, like see us when
Oh,
we come
yeah,
to your cities,
100%.
like meet us. We are very
Yes.
vocal that
Come
way.
and say hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.